Our speaker today has tapped into the colorful world and limitless power of language, which has helped move him across many platforms. Michael Clifton Pintard, born the 3rd of July, 1964, is a Bahamian politician, serving as the leader of the Free National Movement and official leader of the opposition since the 27th of November, 2021. He has been the Member of Parliament for Marco City since 2017. First appointed in 2010, he served 2 terms in the Senate and was the Minister of Agriculture and Marine Resources from 2018 to 2021. Mr. Pintard was born in Nassau, attended AF Adderley, and moved on to various institutes of higher learning, obtaining a number of degrees and certifications. He is highly educated with a love for diverse learning. Before going into politics, our speaker's profound love for literacy and literary expression led him to work in a consultancy with Scribes Limited, radio broadcasting, and art and theater management, as well as urban planning. He helped to found Congo Town Development Limited. Mr. Pintard is an accomplished writer with such works as Still Standing and Follow Your Dream. Our speaker truly epitomizes the understanding of language in living color, with a life that has been propelled to greatness because of the gift of language. As you put your virtual hands together, it is my pleasure today to welcome our prestigious speaker to address us, the Honorable Michael C. Pintard.
Good morning, everyone, educators, students, the incredible speakers that you had on prior to me. Jamal is just an absolutely brilliant young Bahamian that's making us proud globally. And of course, one of my favorite journalists who for years have been working on realizing her dreams, and now both her and her daughter are doing incredible things, placing 242 on the global map. And so it's an honor to be on this panel with them, to have heard the words of Bodine Johnson, who is one of the best singers and rappers rolled into one, and an educator that's excellent at what she does. I've had the great honor of addressing many schools throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, speaking certainly at Language Day, Commonwealth Day, and graduations. And one of the things that always struck me was the creativity of educators. When I went to see our walk and heard the choral verse, Juju, written by a then teacher at the school, I thought to myself, if I had written that piece, I was going to make a couple $100,000 right off the bat, because that was just so incredible. Or I went to Queens College and spoke at multiple graduations, but I had the opportunity to judge a poetry competition and heard a young child by the name, the last name was Higgs, Colin Higgs' son. The poems that he and his fellow students wrote, I thought was so amazing. If I only had the power of those pieces in my inventory, what I could do. The truth is, Bahamians are natural storytellers. And it's manifested in image, it's manifested in dance, it's manifested in artistic expression. And language opens up the world to you. My number one language, to borrow and to channel James Catlin and Kayla Lockett Edwards, my number one language is Bahamianese. It's not broken English, it's a derivation. In other words, it is a language that flows out of the English language, and it's how we speak. We say the long way, bottom of your foot. Jamaicans say foot bottom. If you hear two Bahamians arguing, you would think, and somebody alluded to it, they referred to it earlier, you would think that a war is about to break out and you should run if you're a tourist. But all they're doing is, in an animated way, they are expressing their opinion, and there may not even be a conflict. It could be over politics. It could be over religion. It could be over sports. And so we are an animated people. The question is, when will more of us use our language in order to open new doors of opportunities for ourselves and by extension our communities? And when would more of us use our language to do transformative things, like reach somebody with a word of hope, motivational speaking, reach somebody who would ordinarily not listen to a serious speech, but would accept an important message when it is delivered in humor. So many of our playwrights use humor. They use humor not because they are unable to write serious drama. They often write humor because they understand the cultural makeup of Bahamians and Caribbean people, and people of African descent in particular, who often receive very powerful, tough life lessons through humor. And so for me, I stumbled onto something that many Bahamians just know naturally, and that is that language is a pathway for you to achieve your dreams, to fulfill the mission God has given you. And so for me, I didn't know that I could write poetry. I started to write because it was therapy for me. So language is a way, as Jamal hinted on, it's a way of healing yourself. And so I wrote poems to cope with difficult situations in my own life. Like when I wondered for a moment, did God exist? And if God did exist, was God a he, she, or it? I wrote poems to deal with relationships, pursuing a relationship, the difficulties being in one, having lost one or two or three or four. And so language allowed me to cope. Then I realized that people actually could connect with what I wrote, because some of the themes that you and I write about, whether it's in short story, whether it's in plays, whether it's in poetry, it has a universal appeal because many persons experience the same kinds of scenarios that we do. They deal with it in different ways. And so I began to share poetry more widely. And so the poems were about personal reflection and me taking a look at my own life. The word some people use as introspection. I also was a social activist, a political activist. And so I wrote about political things. They look like us, sound like us, cuss like us, fuss like us. They made the majority with us. But that was them, they were friends. You know, and then I went on to talk about the transition in the politics. And so again, I utilized language as a means through humor, through serious, dealing with serious themes to address political, social, cultural, but very personal issues. We are all storytellers in one way or another. Even the introvert is a storyteller. The question is, to what extent do you wish to use your storytelling ability to inspire others, to heal yourself, to generate a living by creating books, writing plays, because you know that writing is nothing but talking on the page. Joel Salzman made the point that if you could talk, you could write. People have writer's block, but very seldom they have talker's block. And so if you are running into difficulty expressing yourself through writing, you might want to verbalize it, to use the language and record and then translate, because writing is nothing but talking on the page. So even sometimes when you create a poem, some poems work on the page, but does not work on the stage. So some people have the ability to create for the page, but struggle on the stage. Some people create for the stage, but the piece is awkward on the page. And then some people have a gift that they are able to create for both stage and page. And so language is incredible. I never thought for a moment, having studied agriculture, I did an associate's degree in agriculture. I did a bachelor's degree in plant and soil science called agronomy. I did graduate courses in agricultural economics. But who would have, as a Bahamian say, who would have thunk? Who thought for a moment that I'd be able to make a living as a human resources development consultant without certification in human resources, any area of human resources? But nevertheless, I had the good fortune of getting good advice from people who had done it before, that I began speaking at numerous functions. And I did so on a volunteer basis until persons started to invite me to speak to their companies. And so I've spoken at countries around the world. A little boy who lived through multiple corners in Angliston, Yellow Elder, Mount Pleasant. We moved plenty. We moved so much that the bus driver at on Sunday taking me to Sunday school would say, where to now? Again, we moved a lot. But again, having spoken around the world because some adults recognize a talent for speaking. And then God gave me wisdom. Now, I know what my passion is in life. It's to write, it's to help empower people, it's to speak. And I love it so much, I do it for free, but God gave me sense and I discharge. And so speaking became a pathway for me to pay my bills. So whereas I would speak for 45 minutes, generally for free, when I started speaking to companies, I was able to charge $750 for medium-sized companies, $1,000 for bigger companies, $1,500. If it's international, you could charge $2,500 or more. And so again, that was one avenue. And so it wasn't about the money. It was about having a message that you believe could be transformative or could benefit those persons in the audience, whether it was in a financial services company, whether it was a workshop for teachers, or any other area. The second area that I found that the gift of language opened a door for me in was in writing. I never thought for a moment I would produce an album of poetry with music, and that would be played. I did it in Canada and it got tremendous airplay. It drew a tremendous amount of attention. And the reason I did an album before a book is because more people listen than read. And so I thought by doing an album, it would open doors, and it certainly did. And so persons began to request the written version of what was spoken word, poetry, storytelling, free verse, etc. And as a result, I then worked with Patricia Mikolas, one of my favorite writers in the world. She wrote Talking Bahamian 1 and 2, Evening in Guanima. She's the most prolific Bahamian writer that we have, along with Marion Bethel, Obadiah Michael Smith, but certainly Patricia Linton Mikolas and Marion are two of my favorite writers in the world. Absolutely incredible. And so that opened a whole new area where I could impact people's lives with messages that could change their lives if they transferred some of the principles that were outlined in the writing. Sometimes the writing was just for entertainment, or what I call edutainment, education and entertainment combined. And why was that necessary? That was necessary because some people, they are not on an education run. They don't want to be lectured to, they don't want to be preached to, they want to be entertained. So how do you edutain them? How do you, as Bodie Johnson does in her work, how do you grab their attention, captivate them with melody and rhythmic recitations, which will keep their attention, but at the same time, how do you deposit something that is useful in their life now that you have their attention? And so that's what poetry does. That's what storytelling does. That's what theatrical production does. That's what the political satire of the work that Jamal Roll does. That's what the Nixons do in the work that they create. It is edutainment, education roped into entertainment, wonderful images that capture important messages. And so again, language opened a whole new world. I didn't know that I could write plays. In fact, there's still some who say you write productions, you don't do plays. But we had an opportunity working with a group of Bahamian writers to write 5 theatrical productions, in total 7, but several of them I collaborated on. Women Talk, Election 2002, If You Don't Laugh, You'll Cry. Another one we wrote, Count It Again, Man, Count It Again. And then one was What Just Happened. These were designed to help the country heal after tough elections. A couple of them I lost in myself. And so again, the theatrical plays was designed to bring Bahamians together. And while it provided healing, we also got paid. 6 months, the first production we did over a 6-month period, we made $500,000. It wasn't just for entertainment purposes and healing, it was also to try and create an industry where people can do theatrical productions, but not necessarily just as volunteers. They can actually make money. So wherever you are, if you're in primary school on this call, or middle school, grade 7 through 9, or in high school, you have the ability to earn a handsome living while your words are changing people's lives locally and internationally through what you could put out on YouTube or on Facebook, or on multiple platforms that's buying content. So you could write something and get persons who have Netflix and Stars and HBO to buy what you have. Bahamians are as gifted as anyone else anywhere else, which is why we should be proud of our Bahamianese and also learn standard English so that you could communicate. Standard English is so you can communicate effectively with the rest of the world, or some of those people who are a little too stiff in the Bahamas to appreciate that you could be absolutely brilliant while speaking your first language, which is Bahamianese. And so I believe we have a wonderful opportunity to do some absolutely incredible things through our language. One, you could become a motivational speaker. Two, you could become a playwright, a poet, a spoken word artist. Three, you could run a radio show. So many different things. What is also true is that when you are not an effective communicator, whether in Bahamianese or in standard English, there are people who will doubt your understanding of the subject matter that you are talking about. So effective speech or communication, because it doesn't always have to be in speech, reveals to persons your command of the subject matter. And so it is important to read others. Don't buy the view. Some people say, oh, I'm a writer, but I don't read other people because I don't want them to affect my style. Nonsense. It is good to read people to know what else is out there. What techniques do they use? How do they use words to create sounds? How do they use words to paint pictures? How do they use words to create emotional responses in their audience? And that's what I do in writing. And when I read other writers, which I love to do, I want to know, how do they create sounds? How do they paint pictures? How do they evoke emotions of other people? And then finally, today, I'm functioning as the leader of the opposition. But the reality is, I am committed to empowering Bahamians in general. So let's park the politics on the side for a moment. Whenever you are involved in activism or you're involved in politics, you are trying as best as possible to share a vision. That is, what do you see for the future of others, for your country? And is that future substantially better than the one you presently have? So language allows you to communicate a vision, and a vision is nothing but a mental picture of a future state that's better than the state you have right now. And so every political figure, they are about casting vision and finding a way to execute it. And if you're going to put your vision in place, if you're going to make it happen, you have to be able to motivate people. Language. If your vision is going to be put in place, you have to be able to coordinate people. Language. So leadership is the ability to coordinate and motivate people to move in a shared direction towards a common goal. What is one of the principal things that make that happen? Language. And so I thank all of the educators on this call who continue to groom the next generation of leaders in a whole variety of disciplines. You are providing persons who may have natural gifts, you're providing them a way to organize that natural gift in a format that they could communicate life-changing messages that can improve the condition of our people, but also can allow them to generate revenue and income for themselves and for generations unborn. You are providing them with a way that they can be a part of healing themselves by giving themselves a pep talk in the morning, that they can see the world from a vantage point that encourages them rather than and cause them to throw a pity party. They can see the glass and recognize that it's half full and not merely half empty. And they can behold the image in the mirror and see somebody absolutely special and believe that God has created them to do amazing things. And more of our young men can see other young men as an extension of themselves, another gift that God created worth living, and therefore refuse to take their life. And so it's been an honor to spend this time with you this morning, and I was blessed listening to everyone on this call. I grew up in Yellow Elder. On my way downtown one day on the jitney, this came to me: bus bouncing, reggae star announcing, sounds vibrating, eardrum, heartbeat pulsating, volume up all the way. No one say, vibes move you to dance. You hear bim, resonance, no law, but them want more. Windows open, still plenty heat, whole heap of speed, bad streets, that he miss a car, but not by far, that he graze a store, young cry out for more. Bang, shortcut across the gas station yard. He was wearing an African medallion, but it ain't nothing but a fad. And then the elderly woman say, well, listen, drive carefully, especially for the young and elderly. Lord, how this reggae thing, how it make me swing sometime. The driver can't hear a thing. Somebody called bus stop, the driver ease up, expecting the elderly to hop. Man, I tell you, it's a rat race, just a blistering pace. If you complain, you could get punch in your face. Bus stop anywhere, as long as customer there, the equalizer blast the tune, the message, the beat sink into the bone. You hear him say, ragamuffin for a little while. And then he come back in a drunken bastard style. And though yellow man talk bad about her, the big size woman, she rock wilder. Reggae rule along East Street, but police barracks coming up, so they simmer the beat. And then finally, miraculously, the bus arrives on Bay Street.